People are coming in, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll do some basic introductions this afternoon. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Legal webinar. Today's webinar is related to a few topical areas around the controversies of mandating employees to return to the workplace, either fully or partially. I'm Rhoda McVeigh. I'm the Director of Human Resources Services for KMA Human Resources Consulting. KMA Human Resources Consulting works with successful, growing businesses throughout New England and beyond, and we're your partner for managing and growing your most valuable resource, your people. And a little housekeeping before we get started. This Lunch and Legal is set up and designed as a conversation. We welcome and encourage your questions, so please type them into the Q&A function, and we'll endeavor to answer as many questions as we can throughout this Lunch and Legal and at the end of the webinar as well. So joining me today, I would love to introduce to you is Al Gray. Al is a partner in the Labor and Employment Practice Group at Rubin and Rudman in Boston. Al is also a member of the education group where he applies his labor and employment skills for the Massachusetts State Universities. For more than 2 decades, probably 3 at this point, Al has represented employers in all facets of labor and employment law issues. And Al is listed in Best Lawyers in America, Education, Law, Litigation, Labor and Employment 2022-2023. So Al, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your amazing experience.
A little bit more about myself. Well, yes, you said I've been doing this for more than 30 years now. It might even be a little bit longer than that, as the gray hair in my beard will show, but that's okay. My entire professional career has been in some facet of human resources, employment law, whatever. I see there's 40 some odd people signed up for this, and I think that all 40 of us can attest it makes life interesting. You know, we hear different things every day and keeps us going. And sometimes we wonder, like, did that really happen, or what could actually top this? But in law school, I actually took every tax course in law school that they offered. I thought I was going to be a tax lawyer, and I'm like, thank God I'm not. I'm too much of a people person, which is why I am in this field. So as Rhoda indicated, you know, I have been doing some form of both employment law and labor law for a significant portion of my career. I enjoyed doing it. I've kind of seen it all in some ways, but then again, sometimes I wonder if I've seen it all. Outside of work, I have married, have one child. He's 29 years old. He's married. He's an avid dirt bike racer, so that keeps me going on the weekends. So life is good, and you know, we're maybe out of the pandemic, but you know, I know we will see. Even though I was at a conference in Washington, D.C. last week, and I'm starting to hear sprinkling of people who have left and come home with the souvenir of COVID. So hopefully I won't be one of those.
Yes, I was at a family wedding last week, and I just heard from my brother this morning that a couple people there are the same thing.
Yep.
So I'm hoping to stay away from that myself.
A lot of people use the phrase post-pandemic, but you know, I might be better to say, you know, post-lockdown, because you know, is the pandemic truly over?
Yes.
So I will say, as a little bit of an introduction, you know, when Rhoda asked me to do this, we were trying to think of some topics that are interesting. I mean, there's a lot of different things you guys would probably hear about and talk about all the time, but you know, I think the three topics that we kind of put on the agenda are kind of related, but I think that also are probably could generate lots of discussion and that you may have questions on. You know what, that is many of you are probably dealing still with the returning from remote work, or whether that's full-time or hybrid, you know, as well as, you know, this new concept, even though it's not very new, of quiet quitting, and, you know, and what that means and how to combat that. And something else that's kind of like, it's not a new thing, but, you know, protected concerted activity, or basically, you know, what are people talking about? What are employees saying, whether it's at home, on social media, or in the cafeteria of your work environment? So we thought that those would be kind of like 3 good topics, you know, to kind of put out there and have some good discussion about.
Yep, absolutely. So let's get right to it. Let's first of all talk about employees returning to the workplace, because it's still controversial. I mean, we continue to hear, and we just heard last week, Elon Musk, who just, took over Twitter, telling everybody you either come back to work or you resign. So, and everyone talks about trust. There being a big issue of trust there, that it's the foundation of hybrid work and letting people work remote. And people say leaders who insist on people coming back to the workplace when they've been able to be productive remotely lack basic trust. Do you think that that's at the heart of them really wanting people to come back to work, or what do you think that is?
Well, I think one reason employers are asking people to come back to work is economics. I'm paying rent for all this office space. I'm doing, I'm providing this and that. I want it to be used. But there are some places, and I'll use my firm as an example. There are some places that say they want people to come back to work because of the culture of the environment. I'm a partner here, is an associate of the firm going to get the full flavor and understanding of the culture of a law firm if they're not here, if they're not collaborating with other individuals? So that's one reason why, I think a big reason why some want people to come back to work. But you did hit on a particularly good point. For 2+ years, we were all working from home, and for the most part, we were productive and we're getting things done. So why come back? And I guarantee you that of the 42 people that are now on this call, that probably all would agree that it's the younger folks that are saying, I don't need to come in. I don't want to come in. I want to stay home. I'm doing fine at home. So probably your next question will be, what do we need to do? Well, I think the first question you need to ask, do we really need them to come back? And that's the first hurdle. And then if the answer is yes, for a variety of reasons, we need them to come back full time. Can there be a hybrid, or
Right.
What incentives can be offered to get people to come back? I mean, you can only have so many pizza parties in an office.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, is there a downside of having a hybrid and letting teams within an environment kind of figure out what's going to work best for them relative to 2 days a week, every Friday or whatever it might be, to be able to work from home?
No, I don't think there's a downside. I think it's an individual employer choice
Mhm.
of whether that will work. I mean, I think, if losing some talented people is one alternative versus having them come in 2 days a week, and we do whatever team meetings or whatever we may need to do those 2 days a week. If that works, it works. But
Mhm.
I think it's going to be an individualized decision depending upon the employment setting and the need. I mean, the reality is, there are some jobs that can be done 100% of the time at home. There are some jobs that no, they need to come in. Um, Again, using my office as an example, I mean, not that I'm one of the old school lawyers, but there are some old school lawyers here. They can't function without their assistants. I
Mm,
can,
mm.
so some of the so there's a split here of, some of the legal assistants that are coming in and some that are not coming in. My legal assistant, she can do everything that she needs to do, whether she's here or she's home.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Great. You feel like you're totally digital to the extent that you could really do everything electronically and that kind of thing?
Well, I didn't necessarily say that.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, yeah, I mean, with our work system being able to access it from home and whatnot, and if you have a decent printer at home, you could probably do a lot of things. It also would, for a place like here too, would depend on your practice.
Right.
Um, some of the corporate lawyers, they may need to be here because if they're printing out bylaws and amendments and whatever, they need the office services and office supplies. I mean, I don't necessarily, but at the same time, I'm here every day, but that's my choice.
Ah,
As a partner, I have the choice, but I choose to be here because I like the collaboration of the people that are here, and I like to avoid my dog demanding fresh air walks every half hour.
Aha, the truth comes out.
Right.
I see. Okay. Well,
Yes, I mean, there's a question in here. Isn't there? Is there some loss for newer employees not getting to overhear the day-to-day leadership? I kind of alluded to that
yeah.
a few minutes ago. I think that is one of the biggest dilemmas. Is like it's very difficult to create a team concept or collaborative concept when people are working from home. So
Right.
that so particularly with younger individuals or newer individuals, as I said, like here in my environment, having the associates learning what is firm life, what is life in working in a firm, and being available for different individuals and being able to consult with individuals. The associate in my department, he may come to me, he may come to my other colleague. So yes, I do think that newer employees are losing out, or younger
Yeah.
employees are losing out by not physically being present. So
Mm,
does that mean to say that an orientation period should be live in person in the office? Maybe yes, but I
mhm.
think that to become fully vested in the culture of an organization, that there needs to be some presence in the office.
Sure, sure. Do you
But I
also
think the
think it
second
impacts
piece,
the ability to get promoted and advanced if you're not in person as well?
absolutely, I think that, I mean, that's the nature of the beast. I mean, if you're seen and heard, I mean, you're and noticed, there's probably a better likelihood of advancement
Mm,
than for others. But I think that the second piece of, so what do you do to, I mean, saying to a new employee, you must be in the office, probably in this day and age, that's not necessarily enough. But what are you going to do for them? I mean, are you going to offer parking? Are you going to pay for,
mhm.
transportation costs? Are you going to have, lunches every now and then, or breakfast every now and then, or, what is needed to be done to incentivize, people to come into the office? And unfortunately, I think there's got to be a lot of bribery going on out there at this point
Yes,
to make it happen for some. I
for
mean, there
some.
are
Yeah.
some that are committed to the workplace and committed to doing what needs to be done, but others, but what are you going to do for me?
Hmm. Do employees have any kind of legal recourse if they feel they've been able to show they're completely productive working remotely and they don't want to go back to the office? Do they have any kind of legal recourse? Should employers be concerned that they could
No, I
file some
don't
sort
think
of
so.
legal
I mean,
claim if you make me come, you can't make me come back?
no, I don't think that there's any legal recourse. I mean, I think that if an employer has said, we want you back, whether it's for limited time or full time, and that person doesn't comply and they don't have a reasonable accommodation or some other legal issue to stay at home,
Mm,
then they're putting their jobs in jeopardy. So
sure.
I think it's the flip side. I mean, I think that the employer will have rights, but the employee is not going to be able to be successful bringing some sort of an action that says, my employer said they want me in the office, and I said no, and they let me go, and that's not going to be a cause of action.
Okay. They won't be successful. They can try, but they won't be successful.
And in this litigious age, I'm sure some people will try.
Yeah, probably. And could there be consistency issues too? Like if I do let some people work remotely and I don't let others and they seem to have the same types of jobs, would there be consistency issues there and
I
favoritism?
say that, in my opinion, there should be consistency.
Okay.
For a variety, I mean, that's fair. I mean, whether somebody could say, I'm being treated differently than others, that may be a more viable claim than somebody
Mm,
saying, I've been told to come back to work.
okay.
So yeah, I mean, and it's a slippery slope in some ways. And again, I'll use my firm as an example. I mean, technically, associates and staff people are supposed to be here 4 days a week. It's not consistent across the board. I mean, it's also somewhat dictated by what do the partners want, or what do the partners need. And there is buzz in the office like, well, so and so doesn't have to be here 4 days a week. Why do I have to be here 4 days a week?
Ah,
So the worst thing you want to see see happen is have a bigger morale problem because people are being treated differently.
mm,
So it's an issue even for us here. So and it's going to be an
Wow.
issue. It's going to be an issue elsewhere. So the start point is, I say, consistency is important and it is paramount. And if you're not consistent, I think you're going to see you're going to have some little blips in the road.
For sure, for sure. Are you getting questions from your clients around, can I make people come back to work? What's the best way to do this? That kind of thing. Are you seeing a lot of questions, a few questions? What's that volume like for you?
Yeah, and I think it differs in different sectors, from office environments, to there's a few cannabis companies that I represent, dispensaries that I represent, they need people there, and
Yeah.
we represent the state universities, and at one point everybody was home, and trying to tell a 70-year-old professor emeritus who teaching from home was a feat in and of itself. So yes, I mean, I think there is a variety of issues and in various industries and segments of what do I do, how do I deal with this.
Mm-hmm. Got it. We have a couple of questions. Let's see what those are
Yeah,
from
I
the
see
audience.
that's a very tough one. This is
Yeah.
can everybody see the questions? We need to read them.
I need to read. Let's see. Isn't there some loss for newer
We already
employees?
answered
Oh, we're
that
not
one.
getting to overhear the day-to-day leadership. Well, you already answered that. Some employees have moved out of state. I can't mandate that they come in 2 days a week. How to bring consistency with that issue?
Consistently fire them. No. that is a very big issue. And not so much just for presence purposes, but for tax purposes and wage purposes.
Oh, yeah.
We're sitting here mostly, well, I shouldn't say mostly in Massachusetts. I think some of you are in New Hampshire or whatever.
Sure.
But if you have remote workers working in a different state, New York, Connecticut, Maine, Vermont, whatever surrounding states, I mean, there's different issues there. So that the tough part of, like, if you have a legitimate reason for employees wanting to come back to work, I mean, you didn't tell the person to go move to New York. You didn't tell the person to go, move to New Jersey. I mean, if there's a need for them to come in, there's a need for them to come in, and it was a legitimate need and they can't do it, then there might be some actions that you may have to take may impose against those individuals. That I've seen it where, okay, that employer has said, okay, Bob, I need you to come back into the office 2 days a week. Well, I decided to move up to, Nova Scotia. Well, that was your choice.
Yeah. Didn't know that.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's a tough one. And I think the first question is, it's a double-edged sword. Do you really need that person in 2 days a week? But if you're deviating from the requirement for everybody else, I mean, is that going to be problematic as well?
Exactly. What's going to be the ripple effect, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Good questions. Okay. Thank you for that. Let's move on then to talk a little bit about quiet quitting. Which has been defined as a slump in ambition and personal drive, doing just enough to get by. So we talked about that as being, our employees doing what they're supposed to, or are they just going through the motions? So Al, do you think this is something that's really new, or it's just been renamed from a previous term? For example, like somebody who quit and stayed. We used to call it, they quit and stayed.
I was doing a little reading on it, and actually, quiet quitting is the new term.
Yeah.
But apparently historically, we're talking about disengaged employees, and disengaged employees is something we have dealt with forever.
Of course.
I mean, one thing I read was that, there's I guess a famous Seinfeld show where Costanza was, under a desk hiding from
napping
his boss.
under the desk. Yeah.
So that was quiet quitting, from way back when.
Yeah.
So I think it's not necessarily a new term. I think it's just become a new phase because it is connected with the remote coming back from remote or hybrid. So it's not new.
Okay. No, it's just a new term. New term is what applied to it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you seeing your clients become more leery about holding their employees accountable to deadlines and deliverables because of turnover fears? We're hearing about they're hoarding employees and not holding them accountable because they're worried in this market that employees have the power.
I think that also varies depending on the market or the industry. I mean, I think in some industries, probably some employers will take the attitude that Bob or Jane is replaceable. And other industries will say, I need Bob and Jane to stay here. So, but at the same time, the employer has every right and expectation to get the job done that they want done. So I think that this whole quiet quitting or disengaged concept, is I'm a firm believer in communication. I mean, communication in whatever industry. So, I mean, if you're talking to your employees, if you're engaging your employees and you're telling them what needs to be done, as opposed to just, giving mandates, I mean, I think you'll get more productivity. You won't have them running out the door at 4:59. If the phone rings at 4:59, they'll answer it. And then, so they're still there at 5:10, they'll take the call. But, and so communication, compensation, benefits, incentives, I mean, is what's going to combat disengagement or quiet quitting. And I think it's a slippery slope. I think it's very tough. I mean, if somebody is a true to form quiet quitter and they're doing the bare minimum of what their job description says, where does that leave you guys as HR people or as an employer as to what actions can be taken? It's very tough. So probably one of the things that employers need to do is take a hard look again at the job descriptions if they exist and beef them up or modify them. I think I answered your question.
Yeah, I think so. So you're not seeing though, you're still getting the calls around how to hold people accountable, or what type of action should I take if I have an employee who's not performing? Should I write them up? Can I terminate them? What can I do?
I'm sorry, start that over. I was reading one of the questions.
Oh, sure. The question I was saying, you're still getting calls from your clients asking, what can I do about, this person who's not performing? Should I give them a written warning? Can I terminate them? You're not seeing a slowdown those kinds of calls, are you? Or are you?
No, I'm not seeing a slowdown in those kinds. I think it's a prevalent issue that trying to get people engaged, and how do you deal with a person? I mean, there are sometimes I wonder if there's really somebody that's just like really doing just the bare minimum. It's probably somebody's doing less than the minimum, and it stands to reason that you're going to, counsel them, warn them, discipline them. So I think that's what needs to be done. And, discipline is supposed to be a deterrent, but it can be a deterrent for the individual as well as the people around them, so, I guess we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah.
So we have another question here. How do we suggest handling accommodation requests to continue working from home, especially for a vague condition that is outside and I can't see the rest of the quest. Oh, there we go. Outside, a vague condition is outside.
Oh, I see. You're saying, let's see.
We're seeing.
All right. How do you suggest handling accommodation requests to continue working from home, especially for a vague condition that is outside the ADA? We're seeing generic doctor's notes recommending people work from home without any real medical reason to do so. Well, that's a good one.
Well, that is a good one. Well, the start point, you're going to have to address or handle accommodation requests. If there's somebody saying that they have a handicap or disability of some sort.
Yeah.
But then, dealing with the interactive process, trying to figure out if you're going to accommodate that person or not, try to figure out if it is legit. Document. I mean, I can imagine that, yes, there are some rubber stamping doctors out there, because a doctor is not going to want to, if a patient walks into a doctor's office and says, I want to work from home, the doctor's not going to say no. So they're doing a rubber stamp. So I think one of the things that can be done, if you're questioning it, there's nothing stopping you or the employer from getting another, having the person go for a second opinion, or employer side second opinion.
Okay.
I I mean, it may be a cost associated with it, but that cost may outweigh the battle going back and forth with the employee and challenging the employee.
Sure.
Um, this may sound easier said than done, but I think the onus is on the employee to demonstrate that they needed the accommodation. You may Bob may have been a great worker before the pandemic, in work every day, whatever, is athletic and da 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 da. And all of a sudden, oh, woe was me, my back hurts, my back is killing me. You're like, well, what happened, Bob? Show me some proof. Show me some proof, Bob. What happened? What happened to you? Why do you suddenly need an accommodation when you never needed something in the past? I mean, I think that can be part of the interactive process. To have a
Sure.
have a conversation. And if you really doubt, or if you really feel that the doctor is just rubber stamping something, send them off for a second opinion.
Yep. Okay. That's a good one. Is it, if we have a question, is it best practice to allow work from home by role?
By role?
By role, R-O-L-E?
Best practice to work at home by role.
Well, I guess it is in terms of if you're customer facing or not, if you can do, if what you're doing can be done fully remote, then it could be done.
Well, yes. I mean, so I guess in some ways, yes, it probably does have to be done by role. I mean, a police officer can't work from home, obviously, so that's a
Correct.
role.
Correct.
But
a surgeon cannot either yet.
Right. But yeah, so I mean, I think that there are some positions and some jobs, that you have to be on premises to do it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay.
I mean, we represent the state universities, that the biggest fight, one of the
Yeah.
biggest fights that we had was, even though our campuses, or even though there was no classes, we still needed campus police, we still needed dorms cleaned, we still
Right.
needed,
That's true.
even though the students were away, I mean, there were still students on campus. The foreign students couldn't be sent home, they couldn't fly home, so there were still meals that had to be prepared, but
True.
but then a lot of people says, well, I don't want to come to work, so had to be extra incentives, which is still a fight that's going on as to what the so-called essential employees that had to come to work during COVID. I mean, the plumbers had to come, the electricians had to come.
That's right.
So, yeah, so I think that the role or the specific duties will make a big difference as to whether something can be done remotely or hybrid.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're also seeing in the HR world so many articles and consultants that are pushing programs and products related to the importance of the employee experience or engagement and workplace wellness, mental health. And we keep seeing that burnout amongst employees is really greater and becoming more evident than ever. Do you think that that's contributing to this quiet quitting also, or what's really going on?
Yes. Well, I think it's a component of quiet quitting. I don't know if it's contributing to quiet quitting. I think, especially with the younger generation, a lot of them are saying, I don't need this job. I want good work-life balance. I'll go find something else, and it possibly could even be at more money. So why should I stress myself out? I don't need this added stress.
Mm.
One of the articles I was reading, in preparing for today was, I don't need to be aggravated after hours. I don't want to be aggravated over the weekend. I want my 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Let me do what I need to do for the rest of the time. So yes, I think that there is some stressors that are now happening, and I think that it's real, and that there's greater likelihood, particularly with some of the younger folks, not exclusively younger folks, but some of the younger folks that if it doesn't fit what their expectations are, they're going to move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they are setting more boundaries, basically.
Yes. So I mean, it's not like, I don't want to say the employees control, but in some ways, some of the employees are controlling the work environment, where it used to be the employer controls the work environment.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a dilemma particularly again, depending on the industry. I mean, if you need to get the job done, and Bob and Jane are doing it for the most part from home, they're getting the things done. What do I have to do that I may not have had to do 5 years ago, to appease them, so that they will continue, whether they will stay on board.
Right, right. Well, Al, how about attracting talent too? Because I mean, like I've talked to professionals like, attorneys like you and like CPAs that say they're having a harder time attracting people, that graduate from college and so forth, that don't want to put in the killer hours that law firms are known and accounting firms are known for requiring, because they're saying for this very reason, I don't want to work 100 hours a week during tax season. I don't want to have to
It's a
time.
dilemma.
So are you having trouble?
Yes, it's a having trouble. I mean, I think all sectors are having trouble. I teased at the beginning of this and said, my gray hairs and my beard shows I've been around for a while. But it's like a running joke in like the legal community is like, excuse me, when can an associate say no? In my world, the answer is never.
Right.
You do what you're told to do and do, period. But associates are saying no, and it is getting harder and harder to find people that, and I think it's a variety of reasons. That harder and harder to find people to fit the job. We've been looking for an associate with 67 years experience for probably 6, 7, 8 months now. Can't find someone that fits the bill of what we're looking for.
And is that because they won't work the hours? In part?
Well, I mean, it's a kind of like, because of what we do, you can find employment lawyers somewhat easily. You can find labor lawyers somewhat easily, but you don't necessarily find the two of them. I'm one of those crazy ones that does both.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, but I do hear, that it is increasingly, and even in the professional settings, it's very hard to do because, so some of the older people, not necessarily the younger people, will say, why do I want to incur the transportation costs and the daycare costs, when I can work from home? And I guess that goes back to what we've already were talking about is can the job be done from home? But then there's the other piece of it, like the very first question we have, if you're going to hire somebody and you hire them to work remotely and or hybrid or in a hybrid fashion, but they don't understand the culture of the organization, is that going to be effective? So should there be some requirement, to come into the work environment? In my opinion, the answer should be yes.
Yeah, for sure. No question about it. So long as there's some flexibility involved when you hire the person, that they're willing to come in for meetings and for certain transactional things and that kind of thing to get a flavor and get to meet their colleagues and that kind of thing, for sure. Yeah, it's a not an easy thing, for sure. Let's move on then. Let's talk about, what employees are saying, whether at work or on social media, and whether comments are protected or not. There's a lot of buzz around that. And let's start with the basic question around, can one employee talk to another at work about how much they dislike working here? Or can a company just disallow that?
At work is probably a newer phase. I mean, the National Labor Relations Act says, that an individual can engage in protected concerted activity. So talk about wages, terms and conditions of employment. And one of the things that probably some people do not realize, and that applies to unionized employees and non-unionized employees. I mean, most actions at the National Labor Relations Board are filed by unionized employees, but a non-unionized employee can file a complaint at the board for violations of so-called protected concerted activity. So it's happening in a variety of different places. I mean, there's the talk around the bubble, or there's talk in the cafeteria, there's the social media comments, there's talk in the parking lot. I mean, first and foremost, I mean, an employer has an expectation that the employees do their job. So if any form of conversation is interfering with an individual's ability to perform their job, that's problematic. But to answer your question, if somebody is standing up and reaching over the partition and say, I'm really getting tired of these crappy wages. What do you think we could do about it? That is protected concerted activity. And as long as it's not being disruptive or it's not abusive or disparaging, it is probably acceptable. So I think for a while you saw a lot of new things popping up on social media. I think the new thing is for those that are in the office or are in the work environment, that there's talk in the cafeteria, there's talk around the bubbler or taking breaks. So it's encroaching into the workplace, and employers are going to have to be very careful as to when or when not to intervene.
Now, did I hear you say so long as it's not, if they're stepping up, like looking over the divider, as long as they're not saying something disparaging? Is that what you said?
Yes, I did say that.
So what would be something disparaging that they should not say, or they should not be allowed to say?
Human resource counseling is blah 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 blah. So that would be disparaging to them.
Okay.
I might be saying, I wish Rhoda would pay me more money. That would be okay. But Rhoda is a blah 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 blah. That could be disparaging and disruptive.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Would it be okay to counsel someone to say, look, this is not having a positive impact?
Yes.
You're disruptive in the workplace. You're bringing people down, and they're saying they wish you wouldn't talk to them.
Yes, if it affects, it's one thing to voice your opinion and want to be heard, and people are collaborating on trying to improve working conditions. It was another thing to disrupt the workplace. And if it's disrupting the workplace, may not necessarily stop somebody from filing a complaint. It's still going to get investigated or whatever. But if it turns out to be a disruption, and causes angst in the work environment, then yes, I think you can make attempts to curb it.
Okay, fair enough.
But I think it goes even with further. There's also that's not one of our topics today, but there's also a lot of late DEI type conversations, and a lot of it was since the murder of George Floyd, and I've heard. One of the things that's happened at the state universities, the professors talk about, academic freedom and being able to talk about what they want to talk about in class. And I say, well, that's fine. I said, particularly with reasoning, I said, I have no problem with you having a discussion in class saying, talking about the George Floyd murder. And there may be some people that say he got what he deserved, but, that's their opinion, and they can express their opinion. But if you take it one step further and say, he got what he deserved, and every African American on campus should also be killed, that's taking it to a level that it should not be. So I think the same thing within office communications. When does it cross the line of acceptable conversations and not? Some employees may say, and one thing I was just reading a little while ago, I'm assuming most, if not everybody on those calls, deals with private employers. So a question will come up if you approach somebody and say, you really shouldn't be having those conversations at work. Well, it's my First Amendment freedom of speech right. Well, no, it's not in a private environment. It's not. If you're a public employee, yes, you have that right. But if you're a private employee, you do not have that. You do not have that right. That First Amendment, protection to say what you want, how you want, whenever you want.
All right, you heard it here, folks. You on the call here. No First Amendment protection at work. Remember that. Thank you for clarifying that, Al. That's very helpful. So, Al, when companies make their employees sign non-disclosures and/or confidentiality agreements, what does that really prohibit them from discussing or disclosing inside or outside the workplace?
Well, confidentiality agreements or non-disclosure agreements are really intended for trade secrets, if you will, or proprietary information. So, if you don't want an employee leaving and taking a client list and going somewhere else and sharing the client list with their new employer, you don't want them, taking design material with them. So it's that type of information that, non-disclosures. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a sinus infection.
Yeah.
That's the type of information you want to protect from being shared with a new employer. So, and that's, a lot of times right now, what I see a lot of too is that, particularly with the movement of people from employer to employer, having non-confidentiality clauses and non-disclosure clauses and non-solicitation clauses are okay, and probably advisable. In Massachusetts, at least, non-compete is almost out the window,
right?
Unless you want to pay the person while they're on their restricted period, which nobody wants to do that.
Right.
So yes, I would encourage non-solicits and and non-sharing of information, particularly if you have trade secrets or proprietary information that, definitely customer lists, accounting lists, payment information, et cetera.
Okay. But inside, in terms of, it's not really an internal, it's more sharing things externally.
I'm sorry?
It's more sharing information externally versus talking about things internally then?
Yes, I would say that that's true, but I imagine there could be some circumstances where somebody may be working for one department and they shouldn't be sharing information with another, but
there you go. Okay, yeah. Okay, yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. So what can an employer expressly state in their social media policy that their employees are prohibited from doing or saying on social media?
Don't put anything on there that you don't want your mother to see.
My mother's pretty liberal. She's progressive.
Well, I think it goes to kind of what we were just saying before. I mean, is that you can use social media to express your opinion, but you can't be disparaging. You can't be lewd and crude and whatever. I mean,
right.
One of the things I was reading earlier said you can use profanity, but I think it's be cautious what we are watching social media. Be cautious what you may say or do on social media. And I think the phraseology they could use is do not post anything that is disparaging or causes negative reputation or smearing someone's reputation, whether it's the company or individuals of the company. That is acceptable.
Okay. And it's okay to say that you do not have the right to represent the company on social media.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So it's your own opinions that you're representing.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. We have a question here. Let's see what the question is.
My employees is pushing hard against.
One of my employees is pushing hard against the new mandate to come back 2 days a week in January. Wants to continue to spend a third of her time with her mother and father upstate. We're based in New York City. Her main argument, in addition to quality of life, is fairness. Oh, here we go. Since some of my employees, mostly senior folks, but one mid-level employee who's been at the company about the same length of time as her, have moved out of state, how should I address the fairness issue? I know we touched on this, but I'm very focused on responding to this correctly.
That's a tough situation. I mean, because if you're saying to her, I think it's a her, that she wants to do this, and you say no, but you have other individuals that are being essentially allowed to do it, and that's going to be a problem. And I think where you're saying in here that senior level employees are allowed to do it, but she is not, that's going to create an environment you really don't want to have. It's going to be an unhealthy environment. Why should senior employees be able to get away with it as opposed to others?
Morale.
So I'm gonna be honest and say she's, with the scenario you described, she kind of has a point. I mean, I think that if you're letting other people have some form of accommodations, but she can't, unless you say, well, this is why we need you in the office for 2 days a week, because what we need you to do that can't be done at home in the office needs to be A, B, C, and D. So if there's a true legitimate mandate, need, requirement for her to be in the office, I think you could use that, despite the different treatment of how other employees are being treated.
Right. If there's something unique that only
Right.
she can do by being in the office, right?
Yep.
That you need her there for. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Good question though, for asking it.
Then I think that and I don't think that if you had to capitulate to her, that it would have to be forever. I mean, I think that this is gonna get to a situation where you're
Exactly.
gonna have to evaluate a situation. Maybe I may have to do it now, or Sue, we're gonna do it now, but we're not sure how long we can do it. And we'll try it out for 6 months. If it doesn't work, then you may have to make a decision. It's come in, or you're gonna have to start look for something
I think
else
that's fair.
elsewhere.
Yeah, we reserve the right to revisit us every 3 months to see if it's working for you, if it's working for us, that kind of thing. I think that's fair too. Yeah, I like that.
Correct.
So Al, our next question is, we're reading quite a bit about an uptick in unionizing activity, Starbucks, Amazon, etc. What employee discussion around unionizing is protected at work amongst employees and in social media?
That's probably protected more so than just general discussion. I mean, if employees want to like talk with each other and say, what do you think about us starting a union? I mean,
Yeah.
The worst thing you could probably do is like say you can't have that conversation here in the office. That'll get a charge filed against you immediately. You're correct. I mean, there is an uptick in union and attempts by the union to unionize, and like the Starbucks things that was going on, the board allowed what they're calling micro units, where you could certify a 5-person Starbucks operation to be an individual unionized entity, where in the past it would have to be a bigger entity.
Yeah.
The biggest thing about unionization, I mean, people are going to unionize if they're not happy. If they're happy and they're heard, they will not go for a union. I mean, because let's face it, a lot of times, particularly unions come in, and sometimes the wrong unions will come in. They don't know anything better. They don't know. I mean, they can say we're going to try to get better terms and conditions, but without the employer providing better terms and conditions, they're not going to get it. But if you communicate with your employees and treat them right, that the possibility of being unionized decreases. I said this, once at a former firm that I was at that did a lot of work with nursing homes. And if you're an administrator of a nursing home and sitting in your office in your C-suite, and you never get on the floor, the union comes in. If the employees don't know who management is and doesn't hear from management, that's where you're going to be more likely to potentially get unionized. So hit the floor. Make sure employees know who you are. Make sure you listen to employees and hear what their concerns are and try to address them. But you're right. There is a lot of it. They're focusing on certain industries. I mean, there's a big focus, on the cannabis industry, because cannabis dispensaries are popping up all over the place. That they're trying to do that, and it's kind of scary in some ways, because I mean, I recently was involved with a union organization attempt for a particular cannabis company, and it was a mail-in ballot. And this is going to sound terrible, but I'm going to say it anyway. But I was concerned that the young, whatever they're, millennials, Gen Zers, whatever the younger people are called, are going to get this thing in the mail, and then told to do something with it, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and take it to the post office and mail it. And a lot of young people are going to say, "What's that?" They're so they're used to texting, they're used to social media, they're used to this, that, and everything else. And God forbid you had to make a payment because they don't have a checking account. They got Venmo and they have WhatsApp and whatever.
Right.
We did prevail in that case, and the union did not come in. But I think that there are, in this day and age, and particularly with what some of the places that the unions are focusing on, there's some unique challenges involved. But the start point is if you have a good, positive work environment, the likelihood of getting unionized decreases.
Yeah, I think you're right about that for sure too. Also, is it still true? One of the things that I learned years ago when I've been through some unionizing situations is if you have like a bulletin board in the employee area, if you let employees post whatever they want, this is for sale, that is for sale, blah, blah, blah. You can't stop them from posting, want to unionize, give me a call, that kind of thing.
Under the scenario you just described, that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
To minimize that, you need to have some controls. I mean, like,
right.
In order to put something on the bulletin board or online, you need approval. But if it's an open bulletin board,
right,
there's nothing stopping from. Well, one exception. I mean, if it's an open bulletin board, say in a cafeteria,
yep,
you can put it up. But if it's a bulletin board in the the treatment room, yep, that would not be acceptable.
Okay, in the treatment room. Okay, like yeah, got it. Okay, but yeah, okay, that's good to know. Good to know. And then one last question, because we're getting close to running out of time here. We get a lot of calls from clients about gossiping. What can I do? What can I hold people accountable for gossiping at work and all the whispering and stuff and talking to each other about things that just aren't true? What can I do about gossiping at work?
Well, I mean, goes a little bit to protected concerted activity that we were talking about a little bit, but protected concerted activity is limited to work conditions, wages, salaries, terms and conditions of employment. I mean, if you're talking gossip, like, did you hear about Al? I think that you can, potentially call in the players or the people involved and say, you really need to stop spreading rumors. It's you don't know. I mean, with a rumor, you never know what's true, what's false, or whatever. And if it's false, I mean, it could be discriminatory, it could be maligning, it could, hurt somebody's reputation, it could cause emotional stress. So I think that the employer or HR, because they're the ones who are going to get stuck doing it,
right,
can intervene and try to curb some of the particularly negative gossip or the he said, she said, or depending on what's happening in the press, there's all kinds of different things that are said, good, better, and different.
For sure.
We have a question.
Yeah, let's see what the question is. The younger, newer employees are sharing their salaries. It's creating an environment where no one on that level, 1 to 2 years at the company, can get more or less than anyone else. I know I can't tell them to stop because it's their right, but they should know that they are hurting their ability to get higher raises. How to address that? They should know. How should they know that though, right? And younger, newer, they're sharing their salaries.
Well, they are, and there's not a heck of a lot that could be done about it. I mean, I think it's just it's reality. We said you can't do it. They're gonna do it. I mean,
right.
How do you address it? I'm not sure what you mean by how do you address it. I mean, it's consistent, level salaries across same level individuals is one way to address it, but there are excuse me, circumstances where somebody is entitled to a higher pay, and if you got to do it, you got to do it, and if somebody is like complains about it, say, well, I can't get into the specifics with you of why Bob, I would say it this way, Sue is getting a higher salary than you, Bob, but it's warranted, and maybe later on down the line, you can depending on your performance, your salary can be increased as well. So turn it around and try to incentivize the person who's complaining to do something positive to perhaps get a little bonus or incentive later on down the line.
And something else that I sometimes say to them too is, and yes, you can talk to anybody you want to about it, but the people you're talking to can't do anything about it. So
That's
if you are concerned about what your pay is and why, talk to someone who might have some impact, your boss, HR, that kind of thing. Those are the people that can help you understand why you're paid what you're paid,
Yep.
that kind of thing. Maybe you can reason or logic with them, that kind of thing is what you
Agreed.
can do. But yeah. And more states are passing laws about pay transparency. New York City is the latest one to pass the law about pay transparency as well. It's coming more and more. We're seeing that as well in postings, job postings, everything else.
Yep. I mean, a lot of places, there's a lot of, pay equity studies going on. I mean, Massachusetts has, an equal pay statute here, that, gender based. So,
right.
Yeah. I mean, where sometimes in the past things were very hush, hush, quiet, there's more and more, as you just said, transparency of what terms and conditions are in the workplace.
Right. For sure. Well, I think we're about out of time today. Anything else you'd like to say before we end the session, Al? Because you've given us a lot of great information today,
Thank
and
you.
we really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. I'm glad to do it. I mean, my only regret is I can't see any of you all, but that's okay. I don't know if you have or can, if anything you've seen has my contact information, but feel free to reach out, if I can be of any further assistance.
Somebody says thank you.
Yep, mention that you met me on this call, and initial consultations I don't charge, so don't feel bad.
Yes, Al is very active in the community and a lot of different organizations.
And I will say, for some of you, yes, I am based in Boston, but some of you that may not be out in Massachusetts or in New Hampshire, you may be in Maine or wherever you might be. I can still help. I do work in New Hampshire. I mean, there's one of the distinguishing features about a lawyer being licensed in a state. Yes, I'm licensed here in Massachusetts, but I'm not licensed, say, for example, in New Hampshire, which means technically I can't go into court in New Hampshire. But if I needed to go to court in New Hampshire, I get a sponsor or another lawyer to work with me, so it can be done. But I can't remember if I'm saying this right, but the New Hampshire Commission on Civil Rights, I have practiced there. I do practice there. So if you're not in Massachusetts, don't feel that you're constricted, to reach out.
Excellent. We really appreciate all of you spending the time with us today. Your lunchtime, hopefully you had a great sandwich. We have recorded this session today. We're going to be posting it on our website. It should be there by later this afternoon if you want to take a look through it again. And also anybody that might want to submit this for SHRM certification credit, the credit code is 22-XDDRE. Or you can email me at rhoda@kmahr.com and I can give that to you again. But it's 22-XDDRE. And everyone said thank you so much for answering questions live. Everyone really appreciated it today, Al. And thank you again also for being so willing to participate as well. We really enjoyed being able to spend this quality time with you.
No problem.
Especially with you getting over a sinus infection. That's no fun.
Yeah. I'm a trooper.
You are. You absolutely are. No question about that. Thank you. And thanks again to everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday.
Right. You too.
All right. Bye, all.